Hello and welcome to our next series where we start to make a Battle Royale game. The idea is we will make the whole game and we're going to start pretty basic, but it's going to quickly get into more intermediate and advanced topics. It's not going to be like the last series where we just breeze over the scripting. We're actually going to get into it. I'll break a lot of the details out into the bite-sized learnings, but for the most part, I'm going to go over a lot of the scripting. We're going to be dealing with things like, local script versus regular script. We're going to be definitely dealing with module scripts. We're going to be dealing with remote events and remote functions. So we're going to be getting into a lot of what Roblox has to offer by making this Battle Royale. So to get started, we're going to make a new game, and we can just choose flat terrain is fine, or we can choose one of the pre-made games. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to choose flat terrain, and we'll let this load. And so there's a couple things we want to do. Just to get started, we're definitely going to want to publish our game pretty much right away because our game is going to have two places. We're going to have our lobby area, which I'm thinking I'm not going to do like the Fortnite lobby where it's just your character and you have a couple platforms for your friends to join and then you have the menu items. Instead, I think I'm going to have an interactive lobby where players can join and run around and see. You can see what other players have, and they can see what you have, and all that good stuff. And then we'll have some portals to where players can choose to queue up for like a solo game or like squads or whatever the case may be. We'll have different portals available. And that gives us the Roblox feel. So we don't want to just clone Fortnite. We want to, get a Roblox feel to where you can run around and socialize, choose where you want to go, and you can jump in a portal and you can get there. But in order to test our teleport service, we do have to publish our game. So let's get started. The first thing we want to do is we want to lay out a couple areas, and these will be like, your typical shop area, and we can do kind of like a town. Our lobby will be sort of like a town. We'll have like a town square where players can socialize, but then we'll have like the item shop. Maybe we'll have the queuing area, and it'll show a menu. So let's get started with that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to insert a cylinder, and we'll kind of zoom in on that cylinder. And it's just a normal gray cylinder. We are going to rotate this cylinder to stand up. And so we can go to the model tab and make sure our rotate is either 90 or 45. And that's going to help us make sure we just stand it straight up. Now when we move it, it should go all the way up to the top of the terrain so it's not, bleeding into the terrain. And we can zoom it out. And so we want to zoom it out to make it big enough for the player to stand on or stand in. And that's what's going to trigger like the frame to pop up. So we're going to work on mostly GUI the first couple episodes. And so we'll make this, and it'll just be this flat disk. And we're going to call this disk, we're going to name this disk. This one will be shop. So we'll name it shop disk. Is fine. Shop disk. And so what that's going to do is this is going to provide like an on touch event will attach to this, and so when the player touches it, it'll pop open the frame. And we don't want it to be gray. Gray is pretty boring. So let's make shop kind of like a blue color. And we'll put effects on these to make them look a little nicer moving forward. Another thing is the typical grass on Roblox is pretty like a dull green, and I like the bright and vibrant stuff. So we're gonna click on terrain. We're gonna go to material colors, and I'm going to scroll down to grass, and we're gonna change it. Instead of this dark green, we're gonna make it like a really nice vibrant green. And it doesn't really have to be super bright, but definitely more green than was the original. The next thing we're going to do is scroll out, and let's go ahead and let's group this shop disk because it's going to have a couple things. It's going to have like a vendor, maybe an NPC standing there. So we're going to group this, and I'm going to name this shop. Okay, so now we have a group, and inside that group is just shop disk, and that's totally fine. Now we're going to go ahead and duplicate shop, and we're going to move it anywhere. We're going to end up moving these around as in it's like a little town, but for now we'll just do this. Just move it over here. And this one is not going to be blue. We're going to make it, so this one's shop. So the new one, we need like a queue, like a game queue. And so I think game queue, like a bright, yellow, that's where they can go to queue up for a game. That's going to teleport them to a new place. And some other things we need are, I think that's okay for now, actually. We'll just stick with that for now. So we have the shop and we have the game queue. And so we'll just keep those kind of there. And now we're going to just texture paint a little bit. We're going to just paint an area of like the sand or cobblestone or whatever, and it's going to separate from the grass. And that's going to give us sort of like the area players can run around in. And it doesn't really mean anything, but it breaks up the monotony of this grass. And so we can do that by going to view, and then we can do terrain editor, and that'll let us kind of, um, you know, paint some. So if you click terrain editor, you can see the terrain editor. Go over to the edit tab and click paint. And now we can choose one of these pre-made materials. I'm going to do like limestone. Now if we paint, you'll see that it just paints like the area that we're working on. So you can just kind of give this a little, just a brush over. And this is where we're going to put our initial spawn point also. So I'm going to zoom out even more, just take a look. And I'm just going to paint this big giant area. And it doesn't matter what it looks like initially because we're gonna tune it up. But for now, let's just make this area. And we're going to put a couple spawn points here. So go ahead and paint that big, just a big square. And let's put a couple spawn points. So we don't need like a whole bunch, but we definitely need more than one because this lobby is going to take the maximum number of players. So let's say that's 100 players. We don't want all 100 players stacking on top of each other. So we're going to make like 10 or 20 spawn points. So let's go ahead and press the plus next to workspace, and we will just make a model is fine. And we're going to rename this model spawn locations. Spawn locations. And inside here is where we're actually going to add all the spawn locations. And so we're going to start with one. We'll zoom in. We'll uncheck this paint so that we're not painting. And then we'll go back to home so we can recolor this. The color doesn't actually matter because these spawn locations aren't going to be visible. So it doesn't matter what it looks like. But go ahead and select this spawn location and just move it, down somewhere. And then we're going to duplicate it. And we're going to just spread it out. And I'll duplicate it again and again. I'll just keep duplicating it. And basically what I'm doing is just getting enough. Whoop, I don't want to duplicate it again because what we're going to do is we're going to select all of them and we'll duplicate all of them. So when we duplicate all of them, we get to move them, instead of one at a time, now we're doing, 7 at a time. So 4 rows, that gives us 28 spawn locations. And finally, last thing we want to do is select all of our spawn locations and set their transparency to 1. And we should have done this before because we don't actually want to go in and select every decal and remove them. So for now, we'll leave them, but eventually we're going to get rid of those decals as well. So now when we press play, it should just drop us on any one of those spawn locations. We don't care where. We just want to break apart how these players are jumping into our world. We also need to set their can collide because you'll see as we run up, it'll put our character on top of that spawn location. So let's go ahead. We'll just select all of them again, and then we'll go down to can collide and we'll just turn that off. And so now we'll be able to run through it. So that's great. So now we have a spawn location, well, a bunch of them, and then we have our 2 frames. One of them are our 2 kind of shop areas, right? So one of them is going to be the shop, and one of them is going to be like the game queue. We might also put a button so that if they don't want to run to the game queue, they can just queue right up. Maybe we'll even do another shop button, but I really like the idea of the player being able to run over to the shop because I feel like that's very, very much feels like Roblox. So from here, we're okay to publish, and so we're going to go ahead and publish. So we'll say File, Publish to Roblox, and that'll give us this window, and we're going to name this whatever you'd like. So I'm going to, and we can rename this later, so it's no big deal. So I'm going to name mine LCS, which is the Let's Create series. So LCS Battle Royale. Right here in description, I'm just going to say work in progress for LCS tutorial, and we are creating a Battle Royale game, and that'll do it. Okay, so then we'll go into game settings after you click create. Just make sure it's private so that only we could see it. And now that that's done, this is why we needed to do that pretty much at the beginning. Was now when we go to view, and then we can see our game explorer. Now we can see places, and we have a place. And now we can add another place, add new place. So our first one, we're gonna end up renaming this to like the game name, so like Battle Royale or whatever. But our next place is going to be our Battle Island. So this one's called Battle Royale, which is where we are, and this one is called the Battle Island. So now that I right-click Places, Add New Place. Here at the second one we added, we can double-click, and it's going to open a new Roblox studio, so we can work on both of them at the same time. And we're going to just immediately publish this place. So this is going to give us a normal base plate. We actually wanted terrain. That's no big deal though. So we can go ahead and publish this. So we'll say File, Publish to Roblox, and it did. So it published. So it published successfully, and it's in the same game. You can see that by even in this window, we check places and we see we have Battle Royale and Let's Create this place number 8 or whatever. We'll end up renaming this right now. So once you get that published, uh, go ahead and pause if you're not there, and if you are, we're going to go ahead and move on. So if you open up the browser and you go to Roblox, you can tap the Create tab, and in here we have games, places, models. We're going to go ahead and click places. And you'll see the last two places you created. So mine are LCS Battle Royale, but then the newest place we created was that Battle Island, but it's named something that is irrelevant to what we need. So we're going to go ahead and click the settings and configure place, and that'll let us change that name. And so this is going to be like the Battle Island, but I'm going to call mine LCS Battle Island. So the Battle Island is where the players will get teleported to actually do their battle royale, and then they can come back to the lobby to group up or requeue or anything like that. So I'm just going to name this Battle Island and press save. And now when I come back to Studio, when this refreshes, it'll say Battle Island. So if we ended up just closing everything and reopening, we'll see that this is named Battle Island. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to close this, and I'll close this. So Studio is closed. Now I'm going to reopen Studio. And we'll go to Recent. And I'll just go ahead and click the game, LCS Battle Royale. And with this open, now if we click Places, we'll see that it got renamed. We have LCS Battle Royale, which is kind of the lobby. And then we have LCS Battle Island. And I'll double click that Battle Island so that it opens as well. And here we are, we're in the Battle Island. And so this Battle Island, we need to work on the terrain, but we'll do that after the GUI. First thing we want to do is the GUI. So I'm not going to break this apart into a separate video. We're going to roll right into the GUI. And so we're going to pretty much mimic a lot of the Fortnite GUI. And that includes like a health and armor here, or shield, I guess. Down at the bottom right, we're going to have our inventory. At the bottom left is where it's going to show who eliminated who. And then at the top right is a mini map with our kill count and our storm timer and things like that. And then the top left is like your party information. So knowing how this is going to look, we can start on the GUI. So to start on GUI, over here in the Explorer, you have the Starter GUI folder. You can press the plus next to that and just add a screen GUI is what it's called. And so this screen GUI, make sure we're in the Battle Island because our lobby is going to have a different GUI. So under screen GUI, we're going to add a couple frames. And so when we add frames, then we can add labels to those, and it's kind of like um, creating different modules for each piece. And so then we can show a piece without hiding everything else or things like that. So the first one we're going to do is add a frame under the screen GUI, and that will add something called a frame, and we need to rename it. So the first thing we're going to do is the health and shield. So health and shield, you can drag it down to near center. We're going to end up working with the properties to make a center, but just drag it down near center and make it about, if you click off of it, by the way, you won't be able to click it again. So go ahead and just go in your Explorer and click frame and make it about as big as you want it to be, just for visual purposes, because then when we start modifying the properties, we can just kind of keep it where it is. Let's make it as big as you want it to be. And with frame selected, we'll scroll down in properties. And so the first thing we want to find is position. Things we do not want. All right, so position is it's a UDIM2, and so it takes a scale and an offset for X and Y. And so we only want to work with scale, which this has done very nicely. So that's perfect. That's basically what we want, but we need to make sure the math adds up between position and size. So if you look, size is not scale. Size is using offset, and we don't want to use offset initially. We want to use scale. So let's say we need our inventory to be 40% of the screen. We need our health and shield to be 40% of the screen, and then the player eliminate whatever can just be 20% of the screen. So that equals 100%. So the size on this frame, which is going to be our health and shield, is so scale is going to be 0.4, 0, so 40%. The offset is going to be 0 on the X. And then for Y, we are going to do, let's start with 0.1 to make it 10% and see how it looks. So we'll do 0.1 and 0. And I'm going to say that looks a little too small, so I'll say 0.15. And I think that looks okay. So that's like 15%. And you can tell what these percents do by shrinking the window, and you'll see that that frame actually shrinks as well. And that's what we want. We don't want the frame to move off the screen. Okay, so that handles size, for 40% width, 15% height, but we still need to handle position. So with 40% and we want it center, we know we want 60% is what's left because we're using 40. We have 60% around the frame. So on the left and right, if we wanted to make that 40% item center, we need half of 60 on the left and half of 60 on the right. So we're going to put 30% on the left. So this will just be 0.3, and that should center it. And the Y, where it is fine with me. So it's a 15%. It depends on how much you want underneath it, but that looks fine to me. And so now we have a centered frame. And so the last thing we need to do is rename this frame. Just so if you didn't see, the position I had on my frame was 0.808. I'm just going to make that easy and just say 0.8. And so that's the Y scale. And then I'm going to name my frame, and this is going to be health frame. Health frame. Okay, so now we have a health frame. The next thing we need is that looks like it might be too big. 40% and 40%. I see. So with this being 30% over and then 40% wide, we're taking up 70% of the screen. But we want our inventory bar to be 40%. So we're going to change our health frame. Instead of it being 40%, we're going to make it 30%. width. So that's size.x. We're going to do 0.3, and then that's going to change a couple things. So um, let's again move this over. So position the scale.x. So with it being only 30%, we know we get 70% on the size. So instead of this being 0.3, we're going to make it 0.35. And that gives us a little bit more space on this right side. 0.35 was half of 70, 0.7. So now we have a little more space on this right side, and now we can add our inventory frame. So we're going to add another frame to screen GUI. I'm going to just rename it off the bat, so inventory frame. And I'm going to drag that to the bottom right. It's actually going to be, not maybe not as maybe not doesn't need to be as big. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of make it as big as I think I need it to be, and then I'm going to modify the properties to get the percentages there, but still kind of make it look as big as it is right now. So the 0.66 on the position X is fine with me. The 0.818 on the Y in the scale is fine with me. Now I'm going to move to the size. So the size again is using offset. Um, we know that 0.66, that's probably, let's just do 0.7. Nope, 0.7 is too far, so we'll do 0.6. That's not far enough. All right, we'll do 0.66. That's fine. All right, 0.66. So at 0.66, we get 0.34 for the rest of the width. So the size we'll say is 0.32. With no offset. So 0.32, which should stretch it. And now when we change the width, that frame should stay in our viewable area, which is great. This is where we're going to be able to swap our weapons. All right, and so the Y, we don't want offset. So our scale, the other one's 0.15, and that's a little big. So let's do like 0.12 and offset 0, and that puts it about a good size. Okay, so I'll just hover over that again, and you can see that I have a position X scale is 0.66, and the Y scale, I'm just going to do 0.82 just to make it easy. 0.82, and then the size, X scale is 0.32, and Y scale is 0.12. And these are percentages of 100% being 1.0. So there's our inventory frame. The next thing we need is a mini map, so we'll go ahead and make a new frame, and I'll just rename that right straight away to mini map. We want our mini map in the top right, and our mini map is going to be 0.9 on the X is fine scale, and 0.03 on Y. That's fine with me. So 0.9 means we have 0.1 available for the rest of the screen. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll change size to not a full 0.1 though. We want to kind of accommodate that margin. So we'll say like a 0.08, and we need to get rid of that offset. And then a Y, we don't want the offset, so we'll say this can be like a 0.2 and 0. And so now we're looking at this and we see that mini map's a little thin. So instead of its position being 0.9, let's set it at 0.85. Let's see what that does. And so that gives us a 0.15 all the way across, and we'll just do 0.12 of that, so 0.12. Maybe we'll do 0.13. Let's take a look. Size 0.13. Yeah, let's try it. Looks good to me. All right, but the Y size now needs to be a little bit bigger as well, so we'll do 0.25. All right, and that's a good, decent size for our mini map. It's also going to contain those three informational panes, like if the storm is going to move or if it's already moving, how many players are left and how many kills you have. So those will be here as well. But that'll take care of our mini map frame. Oop, I forgot to name. I like to put the type of object in the name. So minimap frame, I like to do that. All right, at the bottom left, we're going to have that little window that says, who eliminated who. And so let's go ahead and make that, and that will be combat info frame. That's fine. And we can move that down to the bottom. And it could be relatively large. It doesn't matter. It's just going to scroll. It might have 2 or 3 or 4 items in there. And then, yeah, I mean, they'll fade away. And it doesn't matter if there's 27 things that just happened. We'll just show the latest 3 or 4. Okay, and so this one, we will put its position X. We just need to sort of zoom that, maybe over zero point 0.1. So we'll go position X instead of well, it's saying 0.019. We'll just say 0.02. And its Y, it's got it at 0.676. Let's just make it a, yes, 0.676 is fine. I'm going to leave that. If yours is like 0.68, that's okay. It's pretty close. But the size is what matters. So we don't want these offsets. So we know that our health frame, its position is at 0.35. So our total width plus position X can equal 0.35. So the size can be well, we put position at 0.02, so we can make this size at 0.3, let's just say 0.30, 0.3. And then get rid of the offset because that's going to make it look bad. And then the Y, we can say its scale. So we set it at its position at 0.68, which gives us 0.32 available. Let's just use 0.3, and we'll set that to 0. And so that'll be our combat info frame. So that, just to go over that again, we have our position is on X is 0.02, and our Y is 0.68, and the size is 0.3X and 0.3Y. Okay, so if you have those frames in, that gives us our combat info frame, our minimap frame, the inventory frame, and the health frame. If you have those frames in, that gets us the start to our GUI on the battle island. And so next time we'll fill in these frames so we can see the health, the shield. We'll be able to just see what the inventory slots look like. We won't get to the combat info frame right away. We'll do that when we start getting into the game programming. And same as the mini map. We won't be getting into the mini map for a couple episodes. But next time we'll start fleshing out the rest of this GUI. So hope to see you there. If you liked what you saw today, go ahead and like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.